Reborn Under a Blood Moon. Book 1 of the Crimson Fang Chronicles. Chapter 3, in which Leanne meets the pack, and the pack loses its collective mind. Leanne woke to sunlight, birdsong, and the unmistakable sound of someone whispering very loudly outside her door. "Can't just look, Song. That's creepy." "I'm not looking. I'm observing." "There's a difference. I took a class." "You took a class in being creepy?" "I took a class in behavioral analysis. At the autumn symposium. You were there." "I was asleep." "Exactly my point." Leanne lay still for a moment, staring at the cedar ceiling, wearing an alpha werewolf's oversized shirt, and contemplated the series of life choices that had led her to this exact moment. The list was long and featured prominently. Dying. She sat up. Her arm ached. A dull, honest pain that was almost comforting compared to the existential kind. The room was warm. The quilts were heavy. Wren's shirt had slipped off one shoulder during the night, which she corrected immediately and with great dignity. And then she padded barefoot to the door and opened it. 2 wolves, human form, tumbled backward. The first was a woman about Leanne's age, maybe a year older, with a sharp fox face and ink-black hair cut in a bob so precise it looked weaponized. She was wearing leather bracers over a linen shirt, had a hunting knife strapped to her thigh, and was currently sprawled on the hallway floor with an expression of absolute zero embarrassment. The second was a man, enormous, easily Wren's height, but twice as wide, with a shaved head and a beard that could have housed a small ecosystem. He was also on the floor. He looked significantly more embarrassed. "Hi," said the woman from the ground. "I'm Song, third-ranked fighter in Black Fang. I could kill you 9 different ways with this knife." She smiled brightly. "Do you want breakfast?" "That's—" the large man started. "Bear, if you say that's not how we greet people one more time, I will put a spider in your bedroll again." The large man, bear apparently, because werewolves were nothing if not literal, closed his mouth. Leanne looked at them. They looked at her. The hallway smelled like cedar and bacon, and the specific brand of chaos that happens when an entire pack learns gossip overnight. "Breakfast," Leanne said. "Sounds fine." The dining hall was a problem, not architecturally. Architecturally, it was lovely. A long, high-ceilinged room with timber beams and a stone fireplace the size of a small apartment, lined with wooden tables that could seat what looked like 100 and currently seated approximately 50 wolves in human form, all of whom turned to look at Leanne the moment she walked in. 50 pairs of eyes, some gold, some amber, some brown, all absolutely riveted. The silence lasted approximately 4 seconds. Then the noise hit like a wave. "That's her!" "The mate? The human mate?" "She's so small." "Song, did you scare her? You scared her, didn't you?" "I did not scare her. I introduced myself professionally." "You told her you could kill her 9 ways." "That is professional. For wolves." Leanne stood in the doorway and experienced what she could only describe as the emotional equivalent of being hit by a very friendly truck. These people, these wolves, were looking at her with curiosity, yes, but also with something she hadn't expected: warmth. Not the calculated warmth of the Bai household, where every smile had a price tag, and every kindness was an investment awaiting returns. This was the artless, clumsy warmth of people who had heard that their alpha, their terrifying, stoic, abs-having alpha, had found his mate, and had collectively decided that this was the most exciting thing to happen since whatever the wolf equivalent of a holiday was. "They're happy," Leanne realized, with a disorientation that bordered on vertigo. "They're happy I'm here." Nobody in the Bai household had ever been happy she was there. She pushed that thought down, down, into the locked room where she kept everything that could make her weak. There was work to do. "Come on!" Song grabbed her elbow with the casual physicality of someone who had no concept of personal space and steered her toward a table near the fireplace. "You sit here. This is the good table. Best proximity to the bacon." Is table proximity to bacon a status indicator? Lian asked. In Black Fang? It's the only status indicator. Bear appeared on Lian's other side, moving with a silence that was frankly impossible for a man in his size. He set a plate in front of her. Bacon, eggs, thick toast, a pile of roasted potatoes, and what appeared to be an entire fruit salad, with a gentleness that suggested he was aware his hands could crush a watermelon. Ren said to make sure you ate, he rumbled, in a voice like a mountain clearing its throat. Did he specify how much? Lian asked, looking at the plate, which contained enough food for a family of 4. Bear looked uncertain. He said, enough. And you interpreted enough as enough to feed a siege. We're wolves, Bear said simply. Our baseline for enough is different. This was, Lian was learning, the answer to approximately 60% of all questions about Black Fang life. Why is the door so large? Wolves. Why are there claw marks on the furniture? Wolves. Why does the beta sleep in a pile of blankets on the common room floor instead of his perfectly good bed? Wolves. Also, Jian was, apparently, a creature of chaos and should not be used as a reference for normal behavior, per Sable. Lian ate. The food was good, unreasonably good, just like the soup, as though the Black Fang kitchen had taken personal offense at the concept of a mediocre meal. She was halfway through the potatoes when she became aware that the table had filled around her. Song was on her left, eating with the efficiency of a woman who viewed meals as fuel between fights. Bear was on her right, a mountain of quiet warmth. Across from her, a young woman with red hair and freckles was trying very hard not to stare and failing spectacularly. Beside her, an older man with a gray beard and kind eyes was pretending to read a book while clearly eavesdropping. And at the far end of the hall, leaning against the wall by the kitchen entrance, with his arms crossed and a mug of something steaming in one hand, was Ren. He was watching her. Not with the golden-eyed intensity from last night, or rather still with that, but diluted, controlled. He'd changed into a dark shirt that he'd actually buttoned, which Lian suspected was a concession to the fact that his shirtlessness had been noted by his entire pack, and his expression was carefully neutral in a way that might have fooled literally anyone who hadn't seen him bring 2 types of soup to a stranger at midnight. Their eyes met across the hall. Ren nodded. Once, sharp. Then he looked away, took a sip of his drink, and absolutely did not look back. He looked back 4 times. Lian counted. After breakfast, Song appointed herself as Lian's unofficial tour guide, a role she performed with the energy of someone who had been specifically told not to overwhelm the guest and had chosen to interpret this instruction creatively. Training grounds, Song said, gesturing to a wide field where several wolves were sparring in human form, moving with a speed and precision that made Lian's martial arts training, the self-defense classes her father had insisted on when she was 12, before Zhou Yifei had put a stop to them, look like a gentle dance recital. We train every morning. Ren usually leads, but he's been busy with administrative duties today. She made air quotes. Which means he's avoiding the training grounds, because if he comes here, he'll have to explain why he was seen carrying a human woman bridal style through the compound last night. It wasn't bridal style, Lian said. Bear saw it. Bear says it was bridal style. Bear does not lie. Bear is mistaken. Bear has perfect night vision. He's a wolf. Lian chose silence as the strategically superior option. The tour continued. Forge, where a wiry, scarred wolf named Ash made weapons and tools with a focus that bordered on religious. Gardens, extensive, maintained by a rotating crew of pack members, which explained the aggressive wisteria. Library, small but well curated, featuring an entire section on pack law and territorial history, that made Lian's strategist brain light up like a signal fire. She was going to need to spend time in that library. A lot of time. And this, Song said, pushing open a heavy wooden door at the edge of the compound, is the overlook. The view hit Lian in the chest. The compound sat on a mountain shelf, and from the overlook, the entire northern territory spread out below like a painted scroll. Forests, rivers. the distant glint of Ashenmere City, where the Bai family compound sat like a jeweled spider in the center of its web. From here, it looked small, manageable, a problem with visible edges. From here, it looked like something she could take apart. Beautiful, isn't it? Song said, leaning against the railing. Yes, Lian murmured, but she wasn't looking at the mountains anymore. She was looking at the thin ribbon of road that wound from the city to the eastern trade routes, the routes her family's jade business depended on. The routes that, in 2 months, would be up for renegotiation under the Territorial Commerce Accord. In her first life, Zhou Yifei had used those negotiations to install loyalists in every checkpoint between here and the southern ports. It had been the foundation of her financial takeover, a quiet strangling of competition that looked, on paper, like legitimate business expansion. Lian knew the names, the dates, the bribes. She was going to need ink and paper, she was going to need the library, and she was going to need to understand Black Fang's trade relationships, because if the pack controlled any of those eastern routes. You're plotting something, Song observed cheerfully. I'm admiring the scenery. You're admiring the trade routes. Your eyes went all sharp and calculating. It was very attractive, honestly. Lian looked at her. Song shrugged. I'm a fighter, not an idiot. You showed up in our territory in a silk dress that costs more than this building. You've got scars you're hiding under bandages. And the first thing you looked at from this overlook wasn't the waterfall, which is stunning, by the way, very romantic, but the road to Ashenmere. She tilted her head. You're either a spy, or you're running from someone rich enough to wear silk and mean enough to make you bleed. Lian said nothing for a long moment. The wind moved through the overlook, carrying pine and distance. The second one, she said quietly. Song nodded. No pity, no probing, just a clean acknowledgement, like a soldier noting a tactical detail. Good, Song said. Spies I have to kill. Refugees I get to train, she grinned. Starting tomorrow, if Sable clears your arm, I'll go easy on you. You won't. I absolutely will not. They stood at the overlook and watched the sun climb over the northern territories, and for the first time since waking in the mud, Lian felt something that wasn't just survival instinct or revenge calculation. She felt like she might belong somewhere. Don't, she warned herself. You're here for a purpose. Don't get comfortable. Don't get attached. But the wind was warm, and Song was already talking about fighting stances. And somewhere behind them in the compound, Lian could hear Jian arguing with Bear about whether the bacon was better today than yesterday. And it was the kind of noise that a home makes when it's full of people who don't want anything from you except your company. Don't you dare, she told her heart. Her heart, as established, had never been very good at listening. The incident happened in the library. It was late afternoon. Lian had spent 3 hours cross-referencing territorial trade records with her memory of the Bai family's business timeline, building a map of Zhou Yifei's future moves in her head, and noting every point where they could be intercepted. The library was warm and quiet, lit by oil lamps and smelling of old paper and leather bindings, and Lian had achieved a state of focused, purposeful calm that was the closest thing to peace she'd experienced in either of her lives. Then she heard the voice. It came from the corridor outside. 2 pack members talking, casual, unaware she was there. She recognized one as the gray-bearded man from breakfast. Elder Mu, Song had called him. A former diplomat. He'd spent decades in the human territories before retiring to Black Fang. Surprised the Bai family sent anyone to the Southern Accords at all, Elder Mu was saying. After the scandal with the first wife. Lian's hand stopped on the page. What scandal? Said the other voice. Younger, unfamiliar. Before your time. The first wife. The original matriarch, before Zhou Yifei. Beautiful woman. Kind. Her name was Chen Meihua. She died when the eldest daughter was young. The official story was illness. A pause. The unofficial story, among those of us who dealt with the Bai family regularly, was rather different. Lian couldn't breathe. Zhou Yifei was the second wife, brought in less than a year after the death. She consolidated the household within months, Anyone loyal to Chen Meihua was removed. Servants, advisors, even family members. Clean sweep. Another pause. There were rumors about the death itself, nothing proven. The Bai family has deep pockets, and deep pockets bury deep truths. The younger voice said something Lian couldn't hear through the roaring in her ears. The eldest daughter is still there, I believe, Elder Mu continued. Lian, I think. Quiet girl. I met her once at a trade function when she was 14. She had her mother's eyes. His tone shifted. Softer, sadder. I often wonder if she knows. The footsteps moved on. The corridor went quiet. Lian sat in the library chair and stared at the trade record in front of her. The words blurred. Her hands were shaking. Not with sorrow. She had spent years, a lifetime, grieving her mother. The grief was an old wound, scarred over. Always there. This was not grief. This was fury. It erupted through her like a physical force, hot and blind and absolute. Zhou Yifei hadn't just stolen her inheritance, her engagement, her life. She had stolen her mother, and Lian had spent 23 years under the same roof as the woman who might have killed the only person who ever loved her without condition. And she had smiled and endured and been good, and she was standing. She didn't remember standing. Her chair had fallen backward. The trade records were scattered. Her stitched arm throbbed, and she didn't care. She was going to walk out of this compound and down that ribbon of road and into the Bai household, and she was going to take Zhou Yifei by the throat and— Lian! The voice came from the doorway, low, steady, the kind of steady that could anchor a ship in a hurricane. Ren stood at the entrance to the library, one hand on the doorframe, those golden eyes reading every line of her body with a precision that left nothing hidden. He was in his dark shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, which was a detail her brain registered, and then aggressively filed away because she was busy, and his expression was calm. Not dismissive calm, not the false calm of someone who didn't understand. The calm of someone who understood exactly what was happening and had come to stand between her and the wildfire. Move, Lian said. Her voice didn't sound like hers. It sounded like something with teeth. No. You don't know what they did. I heard Elder Mu. These walls are thin, and I have wolf hearing. He hadn't moved, hadn't shifted his weight. He was a wall, but a gentle one. I know what you're feeling right now. You don't? I do. His voice dropped, just slightly. My mother was killed when I was 8. Rival pack. I found out who gave the order when I was 15. A beat. I know exactly what you're feeling. The fury stuttered. Not gone, nowhere close to gone, but it stumbled over the quiet truth in his voice, the rawness of it, offered without drama or performance. What did you do? Lian asked. Her voice cracked. She hated that it cracked. Ren was quiet for a moment. I almost killed him, he said. Tracked him for 3 days, had my teeth at his throat. His gaze held hers, unwavering. And then I asked myself whether my mother would have wanted me to become the thing that destroyed her. The library was very still. The answer was no, he said. Lian's hands were fists at her sides, her nails cut into her palms. Every nerve in her body was screaming, Go, move, destroy, make them pay, make them bleed. Lian. He stepped forward. One step, slow, careful, like approaching something wild. You can destroy them. I believe that completely, but not like this. Not tonight, not in rage. His voice was very quiet. You're too smart to waste this on impulse. She wanted to hit him. She wanted to scream. She wanted to burn the Bai compound to the ground and scatter the ashes across Ashenmere. Instead, she burst into tears. It was sudden and horrifying and completely beyond her control. The kind of crying that comes from a place deeper than the current pain, that taps into every suppressed scream and swallowed insult and moment of graceful endurance that was actually just slow suffocation. She cried for her mother, who might have been murdered. She cried for herself, the first version, who died without knowing. She cried for the 14-year-old girl who smiled at trade functions with her mother's eyes and had no idea she was living in her mother's killer's house. She did not expect Ren to hug her. He didn't ask. He didn't hesitate. He crossed the remaining distance in 2 strides and wrapped his arms around her, carefully, always carefully, mindful of the injured arm, and pulled her against his chest with the matter-of-fact tenderness of a man who had absolutely no idea what he was doing, but was going to do it anyway, because she was crying, and that was unacceptable. He was warm. He was solid. He smelled like pine and wood smoke, and that other thing underneath. "I'm getting tears on your shirt," Lian managed, muffled against his chest. "I have other shirts." "This is unprofessional." "We're in a library. I think the standards are different." She laughed. It was a terrible, watery laugh, more sob than humor. But it was a laugh, and she felt his arms tighten around her. Just slightly, just enough. When she made the sound, as though the laugh was something he wanted to keep. They stood like that for a while. The oil lamps flickered. The scattered trade records lay on the floor like fallen leaves. Outside, the compound murmured with the sounds of pack life, laughter, footsteps, the distant clang of Ash's forge. "I'm going to dismantle them," Lian said into his shirt. "Piece by piece, properly." "I know. Not with violence." His arms didn't move. "If that's what you want." "It's what I want. Then that's what we'll do." "We. Not you. We." Lian closed her eyes. The fury was still there. It would always be there, she suspected, banked like coals. But it had been joined by something else. Something steadier. Purpose. She pulled back, wiped her face, looked up at him with red eyes and a blotchy face and absolutely none of the elegant composure she'd been trained to maintain since childhood. "Thank you," she said. Ren looked at her, tear-streaked, disheveled, fierce, with an expression that he was clearly trying very hard to keep neutral and was failing at so completely that Lian would have laughed if she hadn't just finished crying. "You should rest," he said. His voice was slightly hoarse. "I'll pick up the records." "I can." "Rest, Lian." She went. At the door, she turned back. He was already on the floor, gathering the scattered papers with careful hands, putting them back in order. He handled the old records gently, precisely. The way he'd handled her injured arm, the way he handled everything that mattered, she was beginning to realize, with the quiet attention of a man who knew exactly how much damage his hands could do and had decided, long ago, to use them for something else. She left before her heart could do anything stupid. It did something stupid anyway. That night in her room, Lian began to write. Not trade calculations or alliance strategies, though those were coming soon, with a thoroughness that would make Zhou Yifei's accountants weep. She wrote names, dates, every piece of information she remembered about the Bai family's operations, contacts, and vulnerabilities. And at the top of the first page, in careful characters, she wrote, "Chen Mei Hua, my mother. I will find the truth, and when I do, the world will know." She underlined it twice. Then she got to work. Below, in the Alpha's study, Ren sat at his desk and read the same sentence of the Border Patrol report for the 47th time. He had held his mate while she cried. She had smelled like lavender and rage and the cedar from the guest room blankets. Her tears had soaked through his shirt to his skin. He could still feel the warmth of them. He looked at the shirt, considered changing it, did not change it. "You're hopeless," Jian said from the doorway. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough. Song says dinner's ready. Also, she says, and I'm quoting here, 'Tell the Alpha his mate has the scariest plotting face I've ever seen, and I think I'm in love.' Song is not allowed to be in love with my mate." The word slipped out before he could stop it. My mate. Possessive, certain, completely premature given that the woman in question had known him for less than 24 hours and had spent a significant portion of that time either crying on him or telling him to move. Jian's face achieved a level of delight that should have been physically impossible. "I'm telling Song you said my mate," he announced. "You are not." I'm telling everyone you said my mate. Jeez. John! Nine. But the beta was already gone, his laughter echoing down the corridor like a declaration of war. Ren put his head in his hands. The Border Patrol report sat on his desk, unread. He was going to be a terrible alpha until this woman either left or put him out of his misery. Based on the look in her eyes when she'd said, "I'm going to dismantle them," fierce and bright and absolutely unhinged in the most magnificent way, he suspected she was going to do something much worse. She was going to stay. He was not remotely prepared. End of chapter 3.